hope we don't get that chargeback fraud, growing even faster. But let's look at other conversations now. See, a lot of comments and pledges, have come out from the Saudi Africa Summit in Riyadh. The federal government said that the government of Saudi Arabia has pledged to invest in revamping the country's refineries, to get them working and reforming the Central Bank of Nigeria. Well, let's get a sense of how this is going to work. Joining us now for this conversation is Mr. Nick Agule, oil and gas expert, joining me from the UK via Zoom. Great to have you on the show. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning to our viewers.
Fantastic. Great to have you. So, everyone talks about the success of Saudi Aramco, and, would definitely like to see the NNPCL, replicate such success. How did you see the announcement about Saudi Aramco investing in, Nigerian refineries? They did pledge over the weekend.
Well, I'll take the announcement with mixed feelings. The first is that here is our own company, the NNPC, almost 50 years old, unable to refine our crude, leading us to import petroleum products, opening us up to foreign exchange crisis, thereby petrol selling at 640, diesel selling at 1,200 and above in Nigeria unnecessarily. Now this company goes to a company that is like theirs. That's a mistake that a lot of Nigerians make. A lot of Nigerians think that the NNPC is the regulator of the oil industry. But the NNPC is not the regulator of the oil industry. The NNPC is a business. I mean, if you want to think about Shell, Chevron, Total, that is what the NNPC is. It's a business. And this business has been unable to perform its basic function, which is to refine crude oil for Nigerians, and decides to go to another business, which is Saudi Aramco, to say, come and help me. And this Nigerian business is almost 50 years old, like I said. So that is on the one side. On the other side, I'm happy. This is what it takes for Nigeria to wipe away the shame of being one of the largest crude producers in the world, but currently refining 0 barrels of crude oil. If that is what will take away that shame, and if that is what will now assure us of locally refined products, and with the employment generation that will come with it, with the security and guarantee of sufficient product, with the elimination of the cost of logistics of bringing in petroleum products from elsewhere in the world, if that's the benefit we are going to get, then let's go for this deal. So those are my two views, mixed feelings, as I said, about this deal.
Yeah, quite interesting, mixed feelings there. But, it is, good news, getting a huge, company like Saudi Aramco, trying to give us tips on how they have, become a success. But what do you think is in it for the Saudi government and Aramco investing in Nigerian refineries? What do they stand to gain?
Saudi Aramco is one of the world's biggest oil companies, oil businesses in the world. They are producing a large amount of crude oil, and they are refining. I mean, Saudi Arabia refines about 50% of their crude production. It's not like Nigeria that is exporting everything. So Saudi Aramco has been expanding its territorial business over time. So you can see now they've taken investments in China, in Southeast Asia, and the likes. And for them, coming to Nigeria will give them a footprint in the African oil and gas business or sector. So I believe that is what they are seeking. And basically, if they are going to bring in the capital, my suggestion would be this. The Nigerian oil and gas sector has been having issues, basically because of one problem. And that problem is the NNPC. If I can just take our viewers a little bit into the mechanics of oil production. You have the upstream, where oil is actually found in the ground and it is brought to the surface, produced to the surface. And then you have the downstream, which takes care of transporting that crude oil to a refinery, refining it, and then sending that crude oil to the marketing outlets where people can now drive in and buy petrol or buy diesel, buy gas. That's the downstream. The Nigerian oil and gas industry has been producing crude oil from 1950s to date. We have never heard one day that Nigeria has produced 0 barrels of crude oil. And that is because that business is essentially in the hands of international oil companies like the Mobil, the Chevron, the Shells in Nigeria. Coming to downstream, Nigeria decided to hand over downstream to the NNPC. And the NNPC has mismanaged this downstream over time. If I want to tell the viewers that the process of refining crude oil is very simple. You see those boys in the Niger Delta, what they are doing is re-refining. Because what is refining? Refining is you just cook this crude oil. You put that crude oil through a fiery furnace and heat it up to temperatures ranging above 300 degrees Celsius. And then you put that heated crude oil into a distillation unit. And at different boiling points, the petroleum products are coming out. So diesel is coming out, petrol is coming out, LPG is coming out, down to heavy crudes that will bring out things like asphalt that we use in making roads. You know, and the NNPC have been unable to do this simple process for 50 years running, leading Nigeria to refine 0 barrels of crude oil. So the government cannot be doing the same thing and expecting different results. We simply need to take this thing away from the NNPC and hand it over to those who can do this for us. Because you see, let me tell you one thing. Even in the upstream, where the NNPC is operating, since I was born, I have been hearing of the NNPC exploring for crude oil in Lake Chad, in the Benue Trough, in the Niger Trough. After all the billions have been sunk in by the NNPC, let us ask the question, how many barrels of crude oil have been produced by the NNPC in all of the exploration history they have undergone in the northern part of Nigeria? 0. So you see, if Nigeria's crude oil production was actually in the hands of the NNPC, we could probably be producing 0 barrels of crude oil today. So the NNPC is just the problem. And the government will do better to take away this thing away. Imagine, in the days of NITER, when NITER will be making promises to us and we will not be seeing funds. And then the MTNs came in, and now we can see funds everywhere. If government were trying to say, let me bring in MTN, but let MTN work with NITER to give funds to Nigerians, we probably will not have funds today. So the only thing that the government did was that they just took away the phone business from NITER, handed it over to the MTNs and the Airtels and the Glo, and here we are. We have funds in the plentiful. So we saw these refineries before. There was a template for the sale of this. The Obasanjo government sold these refineries at the twilight of their administration. So the template for the sale of these refineries is there. That means investors were willing to pay for these refineries. The government only just needs to take these refineries away from the NNPC, brush up that template that was used to sell the refineries in the past, update it to current realities, and sell off these refineries so that Nigerians can now begin to have value for the investment that we have made in these refineries.
All right, definitely be looking out for what happens next, but we're definitely expecting some good stuff coming out from Aramco there. But let's look at here now. We see the Dangote refineries to get, they've secured a license to refine more than 300,000 barrels per day of Nigerian crude. And this process is, they say it's going to begin soon. How will this, impact the oil and gas industry in Nigeria? And tell me if Nigerians will be able to buy PMS, hopefully if there's a chance to be able to buy PMS cheaper, going forward.
It will be a significant moment for the Nigerian oil and gas industry the day that Dangote refinery begins production. And, I did say somewhere else that the Dangote refinery is a big refinery. It's a 650,000 barrels refinery. So even with these 300,000 barrels of crude oil agreement that they have signed, it's just going to be like half of that capacity. And probably then it means Dangote may have to supplement that with imported crude or source it from somewhere else. But I would have, if I was in the know, or if I had the benefit to even put in a word, I would have said there was no point having this single line 650,000 barrels refinery, because most refineries around the world, they will have like 200,000, 150,000, 300,000, and Dangote could have been a 2 to 3 trains refinery. Because if you have 650,000 in one train, anything that goes wrong with that train, the entire refinery is going to go down. And I think that has been the challenge that Dangote refinery has been having in terms of trying to come on stream, despite the missed deadlines that they have had. Now, if they actually start producing, which I actually pray and hope they do, I expect that Nigeria should buy petroleum products coming off the Dangote refinery cheaper. If not for anything, let us assume that the Dangote refinery cost of refining is the same with a refinery in Singapore, where we go to buy, or in the US. If you subtract the transportation cost from Singapore or Rotterdam or Houston to Nigeria, together with the insurance, the port handling charges, and everything that comes into play with moving petroleum products from refineries abroad into Nigeria, if we subtract that alone and say, okay, we're not going to incur that, that alone should lead to some drop in the cost of petrol that we're buying right now. And I think that Nigeria, we're actually paying too much for petroleum products as it stands today. Because if you look at petroleum, if you look at prices on the pump elsewhere, like in the UK, where I am now, in the US, you discover that about 40 to 50% of what you see on that pump is taxation by the governments of those countries.
All right.
So if you remove the tax element, and then you now say, okay, if without tax, how much will be the pump price? You discover that Nigerians are actually paying too much. And I know why they will be paying too much, because there are a lot of inefficiencies in the NNPC. And we are paying for part of those inefficiencies.
Yeah, definitely. I believe I'm paying too much for PMS, because I know how it impacts my disposable income. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Mr. Nick Agule, oil and gas expert. Join us from UK. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
You too.